Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, Kestra IS, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, Kestra AS, an affiliate of Kestra IS. Capital Advisory Group, Inc. is not affiliated with Kestra IS or Kestra AS. Neither Kestra IS nor Kestra AS provide legal or tax advice and are not certified public accounting firms.
You work hard for your money. For the next hour, you're going to learn how to keep what's yours. Capital Advisory Group presents Keep What's Yours. Here is Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Hello and welcome to Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. I'm Josh Gilbert, sitting here on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, as always, talking taxes.
That's right. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday indeed, and that's what we like to do on Saturdays. We like to talk taxes because it's such an interesting conversation, sitting out back in the hammock with some lemonade, talking taxes. But Jeff, as always, Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. The number, by the way, 636-394-5524. Call it at any point during the show. Leave a message. Get signed up to have Jeff help you with your tax situation and even, some of the wealth advising as well.
Yes.
The thing is, this week, two huge things came out that impact all of us.
Yes, daily basis. Yes.
Here in Missouri, those on the Illinois side might not be affected as much, but the college tuition reimbursement from the Biden administration, an executive order, we'll see, if it gets challenged in court. And then the other big one that we heard, the governor of Missouri, Mike Parson.
That's right. Stepped up to the plate finally.
Yes. A big surplus in the state of Missouri. And he's going to push for tax cuts for Missourians and also throw in some farm subsidies.
Yes.
Mike Parson was a farmer.
Yes, who pays his bills?
Yeah, exactly. So two huge things that we want to talk about, and we'll get into both of those. I think we should dedicate a segment each for both of them. We
Definitely.
could do a whole show on both of them,
Probably could, easy, yeah.
But I want to just kind of remind everybody what you do on a daily basis, what you've done for me. Number one, you filed my taxes.
Yeah.
And we did it electronically. It was very easy. We had a very wonky, we set up an LLC.
Yes.
We share a property with my parents. We do Airbnb. There's some tax things in there. It was easy.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. And we filed electronically and got our tax refund in 3 days.
That's right.
So the IRS works if you file electronically.
Yes, as long as there's nobody that has to touch it or do anything to it. Yeah.
So Jeff was able to do our taxes. It didn't get caught up in a machine.
Nope.
It didn't get spit out on the other side for somebody to look at it. We got our tax return. Bada bing, bada boom. So that could be you next year. But throughout the year, you've also helped us keep more of our money.
Yes.
That's the name of the show. It's the name of the book that you wrote, Keep What's Yours, How to Leverage the New Tax Law to Create Unfair Advantage Over Your Competition, the competition being, in this case, the federal government.
Yes, IRS.
The IRS. How to figure out. Everyone knows about GE. Everyone knows about Amazon.
Yeah.
Do they pay their fair share of taxes? I would say probably not.
Yes.
But they've got whole, buildings full of lawyers working
just to figure what angle they can play legally to reduce their tax bill. It's that simple.
They pour over the parts of the tax code that we'll never see, that will never touch us.
That you'll never even worry about.
I don't plan on making my billions until later in life.
Later.
So I don't
next year.
Yeah, next year. But there's parts of the tax code that pertain directly to us that says, Josh Gilbert, you and all the listeners out there can take advantage of the tax code.
Yes.
To keep a little bit more money on your paycheck.
Every day. They're out there.
In your pocket. Every 2 weeks you get paid.
Yeah.
So every 2 weeks you can keep a little bit more money. But the problem is we're not going to, as the IRS and, the federal government, the House and the Senate, we're not going to tell you about it.
No. They're just going to put it in play. It becomes like, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, right. But nobody knows really what's buried in it. So.
What's in it? Yeah. Well, I'm sure I can go online and read a copy.
You could read the kind of the stuff, or you could actually read what they produce, the 55-page document. But it's like it's dry. It's a dry read.
Yeah. Oh, I could imagine. I could imagine. The whole tax code you said is 7 Bibles long.
Yeah.
So, cuddle up next to a fire and a good book.
2 pages in, you're sleeping.
You're sound asleep. But there are parts of the tax code that pertain directly to us. Yes. They give huge loopholes to corporations, but they've built in some things that we can benefit from. And I'll tell you my personal story. I do it every week. We have a child in daycare. He's in school right now, and we have to pay that. It has to be paid. Why don't we pay it using pre-tax
dollars? Yes.
Pre-tax dollars.
Yes.
So the money that goes to pay for my son's school is pre-tax dollars. And at the end of the year, we used $5,000, maxed out whatever program it was, and we're in the 24% tax bracket. So we kept $1,200
in your pocket,
$1,200, and that was one thing that we utilized. We'll hope to utilize a little bit more this year, but that is an example of something that's in the tax code that pertains to us, and Jeff was able to find it for us.
Yeah. It's that simple.
And it wasn't hard. The first thing you said was, hey, you got a kid in school? Here, let's get you $1,200 right off the top. So Jeff can sit down with you, look at your tax situation, and everybody's situation is different.
Yes.
We're all snowflakes.
Yes.
Beautiful, floating around snowflakes. Your situation is different from mine, different from theirs. So we can take a look, and you can say, just by looking at someone's W-2, you could probably say, well, you're not withholding enough.
Exactly. Either not withholding enough, not contributing enough to a 401k or any type of a pension plan that your company offers. And that's typically free money. A lot of people walk away from it like, oh, I don't want to worry about that. But if the company matches, they match you 2%, 3%. You're walking away from free money. Free money.
And like I said, $1,200, $1,000. That means a lot to me.
Yes.
It might not mean a lot to Jeff Bezos. That's a second of his work.
Yeah, exactly. He blinks his eyes, and he's already burnt that. So
in the time we've been talking, Jeff Bezos has made thousands of seconds dollars.
Yes.
So to me, $1,200 that's a vacation.
It's a lot. Yes.
That's everything. So to have them look at your specific tax situation. We are entering the time of year where once fall hits, Jeff, you always tell us, hey, now's the time of year where you look and say, well, 8-9 months under our belt, what's the rest of the year going to look? Well, we can predict what the rest of the year is going to look like by how the last 9 months have been rolling along. So you can start figuring out, should I dump a bunch of money into my 401k? Should I try to max that out?
Yeah, and if you don't have access to 401ks or 403bs, worry about doing an IRA personally, or even do a Roth IRA. So they're just polar opposites of one another.
Yeah, it's the late season kind of. We're into the home stretch. Yeah. Let's make some adjustments.
Or even if you've always thought about, I want to convert some of my IRAs to a Roth. Now is the time to start doing those calculations and looking at it because you kind of know where you're at.
Make sure that you can kind of predict which tax bracket you're going to go in.
Exactly.
For this year, so if I convert a Roth, this is how much it's going to cost me.
Exactly.
If I want to worry about converting my Roth 30 years from now, I can't predict.
You have no idea.
No idea.
They'll change administrations 100 different times.
Nobody knows.
And nobody will know where we're at.
But if we want to convert some this year, now's the time to do it.
To start looking at it and preparing. You really don't want to pull the trigger till November, December. Tax laws, crazy stuff. We've already popped, 2 major tax law changes this year. And they've kind of come out of nowhere. They've been in the back burner working, but they finally came to life. So we still have a little bit between now and, say, November, December.
Yeah. So we will talk. Let's talk about that stuff. But I just want to remind everybody that taxes isn't once a year. Taxes is not April 15th. It's every day. It's every paycheck you get.
Yes.
And now is the time that if you want to do some conversions, you'll know what it's going to cost you.
Exactly.
And you can make a decision, not even a guesstimate. You can pretty much say.
Start zeroing in pretty close for the end of the year.
Pretty close. This is what it's going to cost you. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Yeah. And Jeff will be there to tell you, it's a good idea. Or
no, it's terrible.
Yeah, don't do that yet. So having someone on your side when it comes to being a wealth advisor and helping us in our retirement, that's great. That's key. But having someone there who also knows the taxes is also pretty key. It's not, why have two people
Exactly.
when you can have one? You know, you got to worry about taxes, but you also have to worry about, being able to have enough in retirement. So,
or being able to pay the bills as you go forward, too. So.
Sure. So that's kind of the thing. That's where we're at right now. Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor. 636-394-5524, Capital Advisory Group, capitaladvisorygrp.com. Take it from me. Jeff is my guy, and he can be yours as well. Now, we'll go to commercial break, but when we come back, two huge things. Let me remind everybody. College tuition reimbursement, in case you've been under a rock or haven't turned on a TV or haven't turned on a radio this week. Everyone's got an opinion. We'll stay out of the fray.
No, we're going to give you the details.
Right.
You can make your own opinion. I get that.
I'm sure you've already made an opinion on it. But we're not going to get into the fray of it. We're all going to get into the nitty-gritty of what it is and the implications, and maybe if
you can take advantage of it.
You can take advantage of it. And it's one of those things with the stimulus checks and everything.
Yeah.
They're coming to you whether you like it or not.
You can't send them back. I really didn't hear of anybody sending them back.
Whether you voted for Trump or whether you voted for Biden, they're still coming to your house, to your bank account. So if it's out there, you might as well take advantage of it because you can't really send it back.
No.
So that's coming down the pipe. The college tuition reimbursement, we'll talk about it in the next segment, but coming up later in the show as well, Governor Mike Parson in the state of Missouri, tax cuts for all.
Yes.
And we'll figure out what he's actually proposing. So, big show today. Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. It's the tax show on the weekends that everybody needs to be tuning into because do you pay taxes?
Yes, I do.
Do I pay taxes?
Yes,
do
you
they
do.
pay taxes?
Yes.
Everybody pays them.
Everybody does.
And I always say, if you're one of these people that says taxation is theft and you're picketing outside.
We need to talk.
Yes, yes. If you don't like taxes, great. You're still going to have to pay them.
Yes.
But how can you pay the lowest amount possible?
Yes. Legally obligated to pay.
Still stay in the good graces of the IRS. That's what Jeff is here for. Specializes in small businesses as well.
That's our prime spot, small businesses, to basically help navigate all the different options that are out there.
Yeah, and I always use the example, if you're a flower shop and you opened a flower shop and you have a green thumb, well, Jeff has got a black and a red thumb.
Yes.
You
do your thing. You run your business, grow your plants, do your thing. We'll take care of the numbers for you.
Hopefully Jeff's thumb is more black than red. It is Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. 636-394-5524. Call now, leave a message, and schedule an appointment for this week to come in and see Jeff. We're going to go to a commercial break, but when we come back, college tuition reimbursement. Again.
It's huge.
Save your opinions. We're just going to tell you what it actually is.
Yes.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back in the Big 550 KTRS, Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall, the weekend show that talks taxes because you pay taxes and I pay taxes.
Exactly.
And everybody listening pays taxes, whether they like it or not.
Exactly. Most not.
Most not. But, I always say, I don't mind paying taxes.
No.
Okay?
I mean, a little bit, as long as it goes to the right spots. I mean, that pays for our bridges and roads and all that stuff.
Sure.
But when you drive down the road and it's filled with potholes, you go, wait a minute.
Where's my money going?
Where's it going?
So then I start to say, well, I don't mind paying taxes, but I don't want to pay a penny more
than what you're legally obligated to.
Than what I'm legally obligated to do. At that point, it's more of a donation.
Yes.
So let's cut the donations and let's find a Jeff Zufall out there. Let's just find Jeff Zufall specifically.
Exactly.
And have him look at your specific tax situation and say, Jeff, where can I keep a little bit more of my money? Every paycheck you'll look and there'll be more on there.
Yes.
You're doing it in the legal way. You always mention the guardrails.
Yes.
The tax code give us, we're driving down the highway. As long as we don't veer off to the left or to the right too far.
You're perfectly fine. Yeah.
You're perfectly fine. And this whole business about the IRS hiring a bunch of agents to come, as long as you're doing your taxes right.
So the only people that I would say for concern, honestly, are small business owners, anybody in the gig economy, stuff like that, because you have a target on your back. IRS says, hey, you're cheating on your taxes. We're going to come find you, whether you're cheating or not. I say the average person that has a daytime job, got a W-2, really no deductions, you really don't have to be that concerned.
Yeah.
Yes, your number may come up, but it's going to be short, sweet, and simple for you. You're going to be able to say, here's my W-2. The employer did it.
Yeah.
I'm following what they have, and I really don't have any deductions. Thank you very much.
And keep the receipts. Don't put them in a shoebox.
So, again, in the past, remember, so when the IRS shows up, they're not looking at like, hey, today. They're looking at a year ago or 2 years ago. So the one thing that they will go after for your average individual is the charity contributions that you had. And in 2020, it was $300 for everybody if you don't itemize. And then in 2021, it was $300 single, $600 married filing jointly. And everybody said, oh, yeah, I had $650 worth of stuff. Did you really? That's what they're going to be looking at. So they'll go, hey, you said you had $600 of charitable contributions. Show me your receipts.
Yep.
Anything over $200, they have to, the actual charity has to send you a notice saying, hey, we received your $220, and no goods or services were offered for this contribution.
Right.
If it's $50 here, $10 there, save the receipts. That's the stuff they're going to be digging for.
So as long as you're doing it right and you have somebody like Jeff on your side, making sure that you're following and driving in between the guardrails, you got nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about.
If you're playing fast and loose in the gig economy,
different story.
Different story.
It will not be a pretty sight when it's over with. So,
but they're out there looking to raise some more revenue because we got a lot of deficit to pay off, and maybe I don't want to get into it. Maybe this new college reimbursement, I have no idea where they're getting the money to pay.
Nobody
for
said yet. So that's the question of the day. They just said, well, it's going to be forgiven, but it was still dollars that were loaned out. Where did it come from? It came hypothetically through tax dollars. You can make your decision based on that.
Sure. So we won't get into picking sides and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Here's the facts.
Here are the facts. The Biden administration using executive order, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it is, technically, because the funny part is even Nancy said in a comment a couple weeks ago that nobody's really brought up, said that, he can't do that. Referencing Biden being able to do this, but apparently he did.
Nancy Pelosi, not your Aunt Nancy.
No, not my Aunt Nancy.
So we'll see if this sticks. But the big news is $10,000 for college tuition reimbursement, up to $20,000 if you have
if you originally got a Pell Grant with your loan, then you can go up to $20,000. So
what is a Pell Grant?
So Pell Grant is basically lower income. That if you qualify, it's the way they phrase it. The easiest way is just you had low income when you applied for the loan. I think this year it's $6,895 max from a Pell Grant. You don't have to pay it back. The only time you have to pay a Pell Grant back is if you quit the program for some reason halfway through the school year. You said, I'm out. I'm going to go roam through Europe with a backpack and a guitar. Then, yes, you would have to pay that Pell Grant back. But anybody that, as long as you finish your term, if you want to call it that, then it's a free scenario.
Interesting.
So if you got a Pell Grant, what that hypothetically means is you had lower income when you applied, so you will get $20,000 back. Everybody else will get $10,000. So the main thrust of this is if you're single, $125,000 of income or less, you're there. You already are in the game. Married filing jointly, $250 and below. So again, you go, hey, you're making $250. I won't critique the top end of the law, but you're not starving by no means.
Right.
But again, it would be $10,000 per person. So husband and wife, if neither one of you got a Pell Grant, you get $10,000 apiece as student loan deduction, and then if you both got Pell Grants, you'd get $40,000. So
how about that? And I had a friend that said she files as head of household.
So she runs kind of in between that, not quite 125, but not quite above 125, but not quite 250. But again, that's the technicality in this law that they haven't come out and said yet. Mm-hmm. So, one, who's paying for it, where the money's coming from. Two, the technicality. So they don't even have a website set up yet so that you could get in and actually do an application. But think of it this way. Technically, they already have your data. So data from IRS knows what you made last year. So the only changes would be somebody who got married this year. and maybe
Right,
you married somebody that makes big bucks, and you get X'd out of it. Or, if you guys are in the same, let's say, pay grade, you got married, so yes, it's going to go to $250. But so what? You still qualify. So.
And to get this thing rolling, I mean, this is so new. We still don't know a lot about it. But to get this thing rolling, they've got a website coming out soon.
It's coming out soon, but it's not out yet.
But it's not out yet.
Yes.
And I'm guessing you just plug in your info and
exactly.
they'll tell you.
They'll take off and run. They know who you are. They know what your student loan balances are. The whole shoot match, so you'd go from there.
And one of these things, tell me this. I don't want to start, spooking the black helicopter people. But, there's a lot of people that say, well, I don't want the government knowing, too much about me. They
already do.
They already do.
There's notices we get from the IRS. They say, hey, you filed X on your tax return. But we got this, and they have a laundry list of stuff. So it's kind of funny, like if somebody, say it's a mismatch on Social Security numbers, whatever the case may be, IRS has a laundry list. They know everything that you make, anything that's reported and not in cash.
And one of those things where we always talk about it when you are filing your taxes for April 15th, the joke is, why are they making me do my taxes when they already know?
They know the numbers. But
the numbers. They want mine to match theirs. It's almost like they're trying to catch me cheating.
Yeah, it's in a roundabout way. It seems that way. But again, here's
what do you think you are?
What do you think? What do you think that number meant? You know? But here's a funny part too. So back a year ago, about 4 years ago, they filed suit against Intuit and H&R Block. And the theory was, for somebody that just has a W-2, why do you have to go pay a preparer? I mean, somebody come in with just a W-2 to us, it takes us 5 seconds to do the return, and we're like, you can do this online for free.
Sure.
And just you copy the data that's right there. The problem is nobody could find the software out there.
It was buried.
It was buried on a website. So that's why they were showing up to us.
They wanted, $35 or something?
And then they get you for a state filing and so on and so forth. So I believe it was H&R Block dropped out of the program because they paid a huge fee. And Intuit, which is your TurboTaxes of the world, they paid a huge fee too and then said, we'll make sure that everybody can find this website. Well, they dropped out of the program also. So now the IRS says, hey, we'll create our own software program. With this money that they're getting from the Inflation Reduction Act.
Oh, yeah, the new $80 billion over 10 years.
So you go, okay, so if you are the judge, jury, you can't be the taxing authority, but then build the software to say what you're going to end up owing at the end of the day. So I can see that concept where people are like, wait.
So if I go to irs.gov, I can't file for free?
You can now because they've actually got that program out there on their site. And it'll take you to a sub-site, but you're still on the IRS's website.
But H&R Block and Intuit, they were supposed to allow, if you have an Eat My situation, I mentioned last segment, I got an
yours
LLC.
You couldn't. Too many technicalities.
Things.
But if you just went to work, got a W-2, and that was it. You had no interest income. You had nothing else. It takes 5 seconds to do your return, seriously.
Yeah.
And you could do it online instantaneously, and it e-files it automatically. But nobody could ever find those websites.
So on purpose.
It was purposely buried.
That's why they got sued.
So that's where a lot of people are like, wait, the IRS, they know what those numbers are already. But again, you could have a charitable contribution. In the past, you can't now, just because it hasn't been voted back in unless you itemize. But in the past, you could give $100 to charity. Take that deduction. IRS would never know that until you reported it.
Yeah. So what about this? Making payments through COVID. If they have given us, through COVID, a deferral. And I got to say, we've been watching this closely because my wife still has student loans.
Exactly.
Out there.
And you'd say, hey, if we get a reprieve, don't pay it. But let's say
the VIG's still rolling. The interest is still accruing, but it's not. What's that thing where we had a big hurricane blow through Alabama where our rental property is, and they said, well, you can defer your mortgage payments, but on the third month you're going to have to pay 3 months in a row.
Exactly.
That's not what this is. This was a straight up, you don't have to pay it.
You don't have to make a payment. Interest still rolls, but you do not have to make a payment. And the concept on it as we've gone forward is now they're saying if you were diligent and through the pandemic of 2020 and 2021, if you were making your regular student loan payments, you will get a credit back on it.
Yeah.
So if you qualify for either 10 or 20,000, you get a bonus, and the bonus is whatever you paid in over those 2 years, you're going to get back.
So wait a minute. So if I chose to make payments through COVID, I don't know why you would, but some people say, look, I got the money.
They're going to knock the bill down as they go forward.
I want to get rid of this student loan. It's hanging over my head, sort of Damocles, whatever. Yes. I'm going to keep paying for the last 2 years. They can that money counted.
It counted against, but you'll get your 10 or 20 grand plus whatever you paid through COVID back.
But they'll give it back to me, and still, and so it's like I paid it, I got it back, but it still counts as being paid.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a gift right there.
Right there.
Again, I'd love to see a percentage of people that said, you don't have to pay this if you don't want to. Oh, great,
okay.
Great. Well, here's my check.
Exactly.
Every month. I'm going to pay it anyway.
Yeah. And they did defer the actual payments. So, again, anybody with if 10 or 20 doesn't make the cut and you still have a balance out there, I think they said the average balance was $28,000 is what's sitting out there per person. And there's people with 6-digit more. I think there was like 12% of the population. Don't quote me on these numbers.
The doctors.
The doctors, yeah. But they did extend the non-payment scenario to December 31st. So, and there was.
Oh, okay. So it's still deferred.
Still deferred until basically your next payment.
What if I pay for the next? I
think they're going to come back
months.
And go, sorry, effective whatever.
This was supposed to be a surprise.
August 20th, it doesn't matter, past that. But again, we don't know. Or here's the worst side. What if over the last 2 years you said, hey, I got the money, I'm going to pay my $10,000 off.
And you paid it off.
So all in naught, now it's going to come back to you. But again, we don't know the exact details of this just yet. It's kind of brand spanking new. Mm-hmm. They don't even have the website out there. But again, at the end of the day, if you just graduated from college a year or two ago, they've got your data, whether you realize it or not.
So we talked about it on the Heidi Show. People weighed in. I got to be honest, we went through a whole hour without taking commercials because so many people wanted to weigh in on this. Listening to McGraw in the morning all week. He's trying to move on to other things.
Yeah, and gets sucked back to it.
I want to talk about college tuition. Okay, we'll go back to that. So it's a very hot button issue, depending on what side of the aisle you sit on. And, I think sometimes it even transcends your political persuasion.
I think it does. It's a little bit above that.
Yeah. But we're not going to get into that stuff right now. We're just going to tell you what it is and what we know. Yeah. So $10,000. You got to be if you're single, you got to be making under 125.
Yes, under 125. Married filing jointly $250, and you get $10,000 per person. So married filing jointly. If you didn't get a Pell Grant originally with your note, you'll get 10 and 10 for $20,000 total. If you got a Pell Grant originally, you'll get 20 and 20.
Yeah, and then if the government has your information, which I'll just say, we file electronically.
Yeah.
They have our bank account.
They have bank account. They know.
We were getting child tax credit coming directly to us. Yep. There was no middleman, no mailman involved. Yep. The government knows everything I do. So
pretty much.
I'm not going to be paranoid about it because it is what
Don't
it
be.
is.
It is what it is. You can't hide. So
if you're like me, then they'll probably just take this off, and you won't even notice.
Exactly, and that's the question on how exactly do they do it. Again, at some point in time, 10,000. I think it's 30. He's already so Biden administration has already canceled $32 billion of $1.6 trillion in outstanding student loans. Now, that $32 billion was actually made from, and I say this, the old ITT tech. They said it was predatory schools.
The for-profit schools.
The for-profit schools.
They canceled all of that.
Everything. It was 100% straight out. Boom, you're done. Thank you very much. So again, they've already canceled $32 billion of that, of $1.6 trillion that's in student loan debt. So, that's kind of that. What's the criteria? It gets down that path we don't want to go, but.
But, and again, without getting too deep into it, one of my questions that arise from this whole thing is, what are they going to do to fix the skyrocketing cost of college.
That's a whole.
It's like they're getting the towels out to dry the bathroom floor, but they haven't turned the tub off.
Yeah, and it's just overflowing everywhere.
So that's where I stand. It's like, okay, you came up with a plan, but you didn't stop.
Exactly, and they're saying some of these schools, the administration is a little bloated, if you want to call it that. But again, not getting in. I don't know each school's scenarios, but that's something that needs to be addressed. I think big picture, but again. Do you want to make this a government mandate and say everybody go to school for free? Goes down a totally different path.
That's a different rabbit
you
hole.
might scratch your head and go, I don't know about that.
Yeah. While we're talking about it, though, boots on the ground, I'm a little guy, and I got a little guy. And he's going to want to either go to college one day or trade school or something. Junior college. What's the best way to save for college?
529 plan.
529.
Yes, 529 plan.
And that's in the state of Missouri.
State of Missouri. So they'll let you put $16,000 into an account as long as the child has a Social Security number. It technically is
which most of them do.
Most of them do before they even get out of hospital. I don't think they.
I read that the Amish don't have to get Social Security numbers.
Wow, that's crazy.
I don't know what that means. If that has changed over the years, or if that was.
I know when our kids were born, that's a long time ago, but. They didn't get out of the hospital
without having one.
Had one assigned to them.
Yeah.
But again, as long as the child has a Social Security number, so unborn child, you can't say, "Hey, I'm gonna put $50,000 in for them," but you could do basically up to $90,000 lump sum. But the state of Missouri is going to give you a 5% state tax credit on $16,000 only. So you get a 5% credit up to $16,000, goes into an account. It's after tax dollars, but as long as it's used for higher education, and I say higher education, trade school, private elementary school, private high school, books, tuition, computers, iPad. Here's one that nobody pays attention to. The first year of college, you're forced to stay in a dorm.
Yes.
That's part of your tuition. But the second year, you move to an apartment off campus. Guess what? It could be used for rent.
Oh.
So you could pay rent. Now, the way that they do this calculation is they take the highest tuition, or I should say room and board, for the college, wherever you're at, geographically, depending upon the school, and that's the maximum that you could use for rent.
Wow, that's interesting.
So
and I got to tell you, those dorms are a lot more expensive.
Sure,
than living off campus.
Use Cape Girardeau as the example. There's the high-rise, custom condos, if you want to call them. That's the high end, and then you have just your regular, dorms in a sense.
Yeah.
So again,
I was on the wrong side of the tracks.
Yeah,
we had no AC.
No AC. Yeah. Good old days in a jail cell.
Yeah, it was cozy.
Yeah, but so you could use your 529 to pay for whatever that maximum
even
is.
Rent, off-campus rent.
Off-campus rent.
How about that?
Yes.
So another reason to call Jeff Zufall. If you are saying college is way too expensive, they need to fix this whole thing. But in the meantime, we still have kids that are going to college.
Exactly.
Or deciding to do JUCO for a couple of years.
Exactly. Trade schools count, too.
Trade schools count as well.
Yeah.
And you know what? And what if my son decides he wants to go and serve his country into the military?
So in the military, they'll flip the bill for everything, and then you go as parents, boo-hoo, that's our money, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Or you could pass it to another sibling.
A different kid.
And you could pass it straight down, no problem.
Yeah. So there are ways to figure out how to pay for college and get the state of Missouri involved in the process. 5% kickback.
Get a credit for it.
Holy cow, of course. That's called keeping what's yours and and getting a little extra on the back end as well. So these things are written into the federal tax code, they're written into the Missouri state tax code, and we'll talk Missouri state taxes on the other side of this. But Jeff Zufall is the senior tax strategist and wealth advisor with Capital Advisory Group. 636-394-5524. Call him now. Leave a message. Get on the books. Go see Jeff. Bring your papers. He'll take a look at your situation, and before you leave, I'm sure he'll say, here's a couple things that we want to target. Here's a couple ways that we can maybe keep some more of our money. Keep what's yours with Jeff Zufall on a Saturday afternoon on the Big 550 KTRS.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the Big 550 KTRS, back on Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. Jeff is Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group, 636-394-5524. Google Jeff Zufall. Google Capital Advisory Group. The number's there. I go to him. My mom's going to start going over there. My sister came in to see you. We haven't even talked about that.
Yeah.
So people are going out to Jeff to see him because we talk about taxes on the radio, and people say, you know what, I might be able to utilize some of those things.
Just save some money.
There are things in the tax code that are written for the big guys like GE and Amazon, and there's things in the tax code that are written for the little guys like us.
Yes.
So unless you know they're there, how do you take advantage of them?
That's right.
Before we get into what Governor Parsons said this week about Missouri taxes, tax cut.
Yes, hopefully.
We'll see. What are they doing on the federal level as far as the Fed goes?
All right. So our friend, Mr. Jerome Powell, spoke Friday that basically they're saying they're pledging that the central bank, which is the Federal Reserve, will use tools forcefully to attack inflation that is still running near its highest level in more than 4 years. Forcefully, which is when they start talking very violently, that scares people, which basically means there's at least 3 more rate hikes coming the rest of this year. And after so last month, technically inflation was 0. And so everybody laughed at Biden when he went on and said it's 0. Well, it's still 8.5%, but it was 0 for the month. He kind of just misspoke on that. But it was funny listening to it because he's like, oh, it's 0.
Yeah.
Yes, but he kind of didn't explain. It's still 8.5%. The average family is still paying, I think the number was $450 more a month with 8.5%.
I'm feeling it.
We see it.
Yeah.
Especially grocery store.
Oh, my gosh.
Grocery store just knocks your socks off, and you're like, well, we didn't even get anything, and it's $400.
Yeah.
But so the Federal Reserve is basically saying that their target is 2% inflation or 8.5. So there's a huge divide currently. And then he also said something that made people sit back and go, and that's what's causing the markets to go a little crazy. Basically, and he's saying that it will cause some pain to the U.S. economy.
Uh-oh.
So that's where the markets are like, whoa, wait a minute. So the Fed starts talking, aggressive, that they're going to combat inflation and get it back to 2%. That's a huge divide. It's here for a while. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But there will be at least 3 more rate hikes this year.
And I saw a story that said corporations are making record profits.
Yes, which is because technically, again, by definition, we are in a recession. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP, which we hit the mark. But the weirdness, I won't say it's different this time because you never want to say that. The weirdness to where we're sitting today is corporate profits are still record.
Right.
And unemployment is low. But the two could change quickly, which means if corporate profit starts to come down, which means companies are not making the money that they expect to, which there's a report that said on the S&P 500 a month ago, the projection was 11.5% of earnings for corporations. Today, it's 5.5%. So it's dropped in half in 30 days, which is an indicator that it's going to start to slow here shortly. So when corporate profits start to slide down, unemployment starts to rise because the first correlation is they lay people off.
Yeah.
So then, yes,
they don't take less, stock dividends.
No.
They just start laying people off.
They'll lay people off to keep that stock dividend up where it's supposed to be or where they want it to be.
I gotta love corporations.
Oh yeah.
So we'll let the bigger brains kind of hash that out.
We'll just kind of keep you clued if it really gets to that point.
It's a goofy recession.
That's a better way to say it. It's goofy.
So we'll just see how it shakes out. We'll have to,
because typically it's corporate profits decline, unemployment skyrockets, which forces 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP.
Yeah.
We just had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP, but everything else is hitting the marks that needs to hit going forward.
It's definitely goofy, so watch this space. We're just going to have to just enjoy the ride.
Just enjoy the ride, see what transpires. Hopefully it's a safe landing, or what the Fed refers to as a soft landing, which means if they raise rates and play their little game the right way, they don't crash the economy.
Yeah. well, I'll hold my breath.
Yes.
Now, what may pertain to us more immediately, Governor Parsons said that we have a surplus of tax dollars.
Which is crazy.
In the state of Missouri. Yes. How'd that happen?
I think somebody miscounted. Hopefully they send them back to recount one more time.
Yeah, please, before we make these huge tax cuts and say, oh, by the way, we're actually in the hole $700 million. Tax cuts for Missourians. Now, how much is the surplus?
They didn't say what the actual surplus was, big picture, but I believe it's $700 million in tax cuts is what they're proposing. So maybe it's somewhere around that.
So I guess the idea is that just like a budget in your office. If we didn't spend all the money,
that's right.
Then next year
we'll get our budget trimmed by whatever that
trim
difference
the budget
is.
down.
Yeah.
We're not just going to keep taking in $700 million. We're going to let you keep that. So what does Missouri's tax rate look like right now?
The highest tax rate in the state of Missouri is 5.3%. So you need to earn about I think $150,000 plus before you go into the 5.3%.
Mm-hmm.
That's adjusted gross. So you could make a whole bunch more on the federal side. You take all your deductions and it passes across and hits the Missouri side, and then it goes from there. They're taking it from, because we use typically on average, somebody says, hey, what's my state tax? We just say 5%.
Yeah.
It's kind of the norm. But they want to take it from 5.3% and drop it all the way to 4.8%. And you go, you might be splitting hairs there, but every little bit counts, seriously. But what they're also doing is they're going to give an extra $2,000 for itemized deductions for single and $4,000 for, they say family, but we're going to say married filing jointly. And so basically it's a $16,000 exclusion and for singles and $32,000 for married filing jointly.
So that means the first $16,000 I make
of taxable Missouri state taxable income, you don't pay taxes.
You don't pay taxes on it.
Yes.
So if I make $17,000, I only pay taxes on $1,000.
Exactly.
Married filing jointly, that's $32,000.
Yep.
That's what a lot of us are out there. So that's going away. They're raising the minimum.
Exactly. So basically anybody, I'll say on fixed income. We have a lot of retirees that just skid right above that threshold where they have to pay in a little bit of state tax. I think this year, if it really does pass, they will not pay any tax.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's raising that threshold just enough to get a lot of those people where they don't pay state tax.
So is this going to, every little bit counts. I say it all the time.
Yeah.
But is this going to amount to, a lot on my paycheck?
Well, I think they say if you make $150,000 a year, it's worth $500 a year to you.
Okay.
Which I think that's worth it.
I like talking
That's
round
a tank
numbers.
of gas today,
yeah,
but.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's one trip to the grocery store. Built into this thing, though, was, curiously, some farm subsidies.
There's a ton of farm subsidies in there, but that's where his lobbying group comes from. Parson, I think, is a farm guy.
Do we just accept this, though?
You go, okay, if the farmers aren't making money, which, again, seeing some of the financials on some farms and some ranchers, I reclassify that farmers versus ranchers. The ranchers is we see they're profitable, make money. The farmers skidding by.
Yeah.
So
we got to eat though.
Got to eat, and any little bit that helps them, I think that's worth it right there. Seriously,
okay.
To kind of keep them going because yes, you see a farmer driving around in a very nice truck, but that's his work truck. You don't see him rolling a Maserati out of the barn. Going, hey, let's go for a ride.
It'd be good. It'd probably be really muddy.
It would be very muddy, but you just don't see that. But a rancher, that's very possible that the Maserati's tucked in the
ranchers
garage.
are rolling it.
So it's just definition.
I got to get a couple head of cattle.
That's right.
I got a nice big backyard now.
And there's a whole set of new tax laws for that too. Subsidies for cattle and grazing.
Do you see farmers in
very
ranchers?
rarely? It's its own little facet of the tax code, and we do sub that out. It's just that we don't deal with enough farmers. We're St. Louis County. We just don't see it. I mean, we see people who live in the county who have a farm out in central Missouri, But we still will find that there's a CPA we use that is very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
At weird stuff, or if you have a cow, you get a credit, and it's like, okay.
Credit for my cow.
Yes.
How about that? Well, I mean, Jeff, you specialize, you do my taxes, and I'm just a guy. But you specialize in small businesses.
Small businesses, yes.
So since we are in St. Louis County, to your point, we see a lot of small businesses,
Exactly.
not a lot of ranchers.
No,
and
not many
farmers.
ranchers or farmers.
But
anymore.
you know what to do with it.
Yeah, we know when we see it.
If
We're
it
like,
comes
oh,
in.
this is where it goes.
So again, the tax code is written for everyone.
Yes.
So there's parts of it for the corporations that we'll never see. There's parts of it for us that you can help us out with. There's parts of it for the farmers and the ranchers.
Yeah. Exactly.
Different rules for different strokes.
Yes,
for
exactly.
different folks. So it really just depends what your snowflake financial tax liability is. Everyone's is completely different.
Exactly.
In this case, snowflake is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So everyone is different, but you can take a look and you can say, I'm going to go through this. And, if I brought you my stuff today, you could probably look at it and say, well, if the governor gets his way, we can maybe see $500 extra bucks at the end of the year.
Exactly. Yeah.
And again, we had $1,200 and we were through the moon.
Exactly. So maybe 500. You're at 18.
We're almost at
We're
$2,000.
That's right.
So we're just trudging along here, trying to make sure that we are keeping more of our money in our bank accounts and on our paychecks, and not going off to the federal government, and in this case, not going off to the state of Missouri.
Yes.
Because who could spend that money better? I can.
Yeah. Exactly.
I can. So,
I agree 100%.
I'm not going to get mad about taxes. It's not worth it to me.
It's not worth it. It's a necessary evil. But don't pay more than what you're legally obligated to pay.
You want to live in the greatest country in the world. You got to pay to play.
Exactly.
It's called taxes. But I'm not paying a penny more than what I should.
Exactly.
And the IRS, I always joke, Jeff, I think the IRS, when they see my tax return come in after you prepare it and let us keep more of our money, they ring a bell and say, oh, my God, there's a guy in St. Louis who finally used the tax code as it was written. Now that I actually know how the IRS works, there's no bell.
There's no bell. You don't want that bell to ring.
Nobody's even looking at my tax because it's
straight
perfect.
In, straight out.
Because you did it. It goes straight in, straight out. We got our tax return in 3 days. But I like to think that somewhere someone's listening right now that works for the IRS and is tearing up saying, I can't believe someone's actually using the tax code to their advantage. So the corporations do it. Why shouldn't we?
Exactly.
Jeff, thank you so much. That was a great
you.
show this week. A lot of information, talking college tuition, talking the tax cuts for Missourians, talking the Fed. There will be some pain. Hate to say that.
I hate to read that or say it.
Can you use it a different phrase?
Yeah, but they say it a little aggressive.
But the more we get into it, the more we realize I can't do this on my own.
No.
I need Jeff Zufall in my corner. 636-394-5524. And you saw my sister. She brought in her wife's a teacher. Teachers, rules for teachers are a little bit different as well.
They get the extra credit this year. Was $250, now it goes to $300. So they get a no questions asked. They get a $300 deduction straight out for teacher's credit or educator credit, if you want to call it that.
If you're a teacher or your wife's a teacher or your husband's a teacher or a family member's a teacher, say Jeff knows all about the teachers. So give him a look. 636-394-5524, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor, Capital Advisory Group, CapitalAdvisoryGRP.com. Jeff Zufall, keep what's yours. Thanks so much.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Keep What's Yours with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Manager at Capital Advisory Group. To learn more, call 636-394-5524 or visit CapitalAdvisoryGRP.com.